So this brings us to another position, another question we need to ask. What what about the pre-Adamic world? What was going on there? Was there other people here besides Adam and Eve? Was there people that got here first? Well, I want to take you here. We can go back to Genesis chapter 2. This deals specifically with a special part of creation where God was dealing with Adam and Eve. He was dealing with creating man, creating a help meet, not a help mate. Eve was not a help mate; she was a help meet, and I believe there's a distinction there that we need to make very clear. I don't think Eve was just there to help him mate. I think she was there to help him meet certain goals and to be a gift to Adam. See, a lot of times guys think they're the gift to the wife, they're the gift to the women, but that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible tells us that the wife is a gift to the husband, to the man. And I will point this out. I've never taught this. I don't remember ever teaching this from a platform before, but I'll go ahead and say it now. If you follow the pictures and the imagery in scriptures, you'll notice something happened before the first marriage took place. Adam was in the image and likeness of God. And then later we find out that he took a wife that came from his body, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. And I find that very significant because to me, because I've never been married, but I've talked to people that have been married, and they told me it's difficult. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone from getting married, but when you look at that text, I'm convinced that the only chance that you have to really assure, and it's not even a guarantee even then, because different things will pop up. But I think your best chance of staying married is to be in the image and likeness in God, and the only way you can do that is through salvation, saving grace of Jesus Christ. I fully believe that, and so I want to interject that. God brought it back to my memory here while I was teaching. I want to share that because I feel maybe somebody needed to hear that. You get people trying to enter into all these relationships, dating, dating, and the Bible don't really talk a lot about dating. It talks about marriage, and that's a whole other story in itself. But they get married, they get divorced, they get married, they get divorced, and it just goes on and on and on. And God, I think if people were more in the image and likeness of God, then we could eliminate a lot of the divorce that goes on in the world. But anyway, that's me interpreting the scripture there for you. But anyway, let's talk about this pre-Adamic race. If you look in the English text of Genesis chapter 2, you'll find out that in the first part of it, God's talking about how he created man, he created man, he created man. Matter of fact, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, 15, and 18, he refers to creating man. And then when you go to verse 20, he talks about how he put the man in the garden. And I find that very interesting because at the beginning of Genesis chapter 2, the word man is interpreted as mankind, meaning a group. And when you get down to verse 20, it shifts to meaning Adam more of a singular thing. And I'm going to be honest with you, if there was no period of time, if there was no gap, if God created everything on the creation week, then again, that meant that there couldn't be any people, no Cro-Magnon, no nothing like that, no Neanderthal. That wouldn't have existed before the creation week, because we've already seen how God put everything together on the creation week. And if that's true, then what do we do? What do we make out of this? How can God have mankind and also man singular and man plural at the same time in his creation? And I've thought about that, and I've talked to God. Said, I need if what you're saying is that mankind plural and man singular was created at the same time, then I need to be able to confirm this elsewhere in scriptures. And I want to read a passage of scripture to you, and I think this really helps drive it home from a biblical standpoint. I know many people are listening to this out there. They have not listened to it live. They will be listening to it probably tomorrow or in the upcoming days. And I want to just I want to give you some scripture that you may have already heard, but you probably hadn't heard it the way I'm linking together. Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews chapter 7. Now, some of you who are savvy in scripture, y'all know this stuff. You already know where I'm going. You already know. But Hebrews chapter 7, look at what we got here. Hebrews 7, I'm going to read verses 9 and 10. Look at what it says. And as I may say so, Levi also received tithes, paid tithes in Abraham, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Okay, what's this talking about? You remember when Abraham went to rescue Lot from the Sodomites, or actually not from the Sodomites, but when he went to rescue him, when the kings had taken over Sodom in the area, and they took captives, and Abraham went to free his nephew Lot. Coming back to that battle, he met a mysterious character, a mysterious individual named Melchizedek, or at least that was his title, the Melchizedek, the King of Righteousness, if I got that right. And Abraham paid a tenth tithe to them. And what the writer of Hebrews is telling us is that even though Levi, the priest, hadn't been born yet, genetically, if you will, he was still in the loins of Abraham by proxy, and so therefore you have Levi paying tribute to Melchizedek, therefore making Melchizedek a higher order than the Aaronic priesthood through the father Levi. I hope that made sense to you. Now, if this is true, then I don't see why we can't apply it to God creating mankind singular and plural at the same time. You have to remember, when God created Adam, what did he do? He said, be fruitful and multiply. And what this did, this answers a lot of questions on his, now obviously when he was created, he was at year one. But how old was he when you break down to it? Well, the Bible tells us at a minimum age the Bible tells us a minimum physical appearance age that Adam would have had to be. He said, be fruitful and multiply. That means that Adam would have had to have been old enough to have seed in his body that he could go on to produce a family the day he was created. There's a whole can of worms you can get into that. I mean, Adam could have been as young as 12 or 13 when God put him in the garden. And again, he could have been as old as 30. We just don't know. But maybe we'll get a chance to go more into that when we start looking more into the Genesis's history in these upcoming weeks. But I think that actually kind of helps clarify that, because again, we're going back to it. If God didn't create everything until the creation week, then there could have been a pre-Adamic race. There could have been an angelic war, an angelic revolt. That just couldn't have happened. Now, I want to share a passage of scripture with you. This gets a little bit tricky, but if we're going to talk about a pre-Adamic race, we really have to go into Jeremiah chapter 4. And I'm going to be honest with you. Back when I first started studying this, Jeremiah chapter 4 and other places, this is what sold me that there had to be a pre-Adamic race, until I started looking at other passages of scripture that said God created everything in the creation week. But let's take a look at this. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23 and 25 is what I'm going to be reading. Let's take a look at this. Jeremiah, actually I got so many pages in my Bible, I got dog-eared. Jeremiah, okay, I need to put my glasses on. Jeremiah chapter 4, here we go. Jeremiah 4. Okay, this is Jeremiah 4. I'm going to start reading verse 23. This is actually dealing with God calling Israel to return back to God, and some of the judgments to get ready to be handed out. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23 says this: I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. And I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. And beheld, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens had fled. Now, let me explain something there. There's clearly some kind of a judgment that's going on here. But the word here for man, again, is mankind. I mean, there was no, this is more plural, saying that the people had just, that they weren't there. They had fled away. And the word bird there, I want to make it something very clear. If you look this word up, you'll find out that this word bird, it doesn't mean a hawk. It doesn't mean an owl or an eagle or a chicken or what other kind of fowl you want it to believe. It actually means a winged creature, not necessarily a physical winged creature. It could be a spiritual creature. So I find that very interesting that this is making a reference to something, a judgment that is going down, that people weren't here, and neither were there any angelic beings there. So I'm going to be honest with you. I've looked at this, and I don't have a solid answer on what was going on here at this point in time. But we have to remember that this may have been before, it may not. But even if it wasn't during the creation week, even if it's before, that still remains the question: what happened? We still haven't answered that question. what was going on in the what was going on between Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1 and 2, because we know something did happen, something was going on, something did transpire. So, what do we have here? Hold your horses. I'm going to be getting there. I want to share something with you. I do want to say this, that if you have a gap theory going on here, I want to show you just some basic problems with this periods of long years or millions or even billions of years, something that we have here. One problem that it has, it omits that God clearly said in several passages of Scripture, again, He created everything there in the creation week. Secondly, why would angels be here thousands or millions of years before mankind is? It doesn't make any sense. Why? Hebrews 1:14 says that He made them as ministers to those who are heirs of salvation. The angels are here for us. Why put them in eternity past? You know, what are they going to be? I mean, what are they doing? Just sitting here waiting till we get here? Doesn't make much sense. Now, get a load of this. The plants were created on day 3, and without proper sunlight or insects to give them photosynthesis and pollinate, they would die. If they were here for a long period of time, millions of years, whatever, they couldn't last. So you have to really twist these scriptures to get long periods and information out of this. You have to. Now, it also ignores two specific passages of Scripture. Exodus chapter 20, verse 9 through 11. Let's read that one. I'm going to jump over here and read to you Exodus chapter 20, which, by the way, 20 it's very easy to remember. Exodus 20, if you have that, you get the number 10. That's the 10 Commandments. Exodus 20 is where we get the 10 Commandments. Now, check this out. Exodus 20, 10 Commandments. And we're looking at verse 9 to 11, I believe. Listen to what it says here. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work. Verse 10, but in the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservants, nor thy maidservants, nor thy cattle, nor the stranger that is within the gates. Verse 11, for, get this, in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all in them is, and rested on the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now notice what he's saying. The creation week is set forth as a pattern on how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to do our work ethic. So if God was working for thousands or millions of years, that means that we'd have to take thousands or millions of years when we take a day off. He's making a direct connection to the creation week and the Sabbath to the work week for mankind and the Sabbath. So if you believe in long periods of time, then you got a problem with Genesis chapter 20. Another thing that I want to mention is that to believe in longer periods before the creation week that happened, it ignores one of the basic fundamental scientific teachings, and that is the anthropic principle. Well, Michael, what is the anthropic principle? The anthropic principle is just a scientific statement that says that the whole universe, everything was put together for the purpose of supporting human life. Wow. That's kind of profoundly simple, isn't it? That God made everything for the benefit of mankind. Matter of fact,